I say, dear chaps, shouldn't you go on a diet?
Are you talking to me? Maybe if these guys would make these holes bigger, I could fit easier, know what I'm saying?
Hey, man, I'll help you out.
No, Aries, no.
Come on, guys, we have work to do. We come from the Action 52 game world where every game is...
Yeah, we're talking action and lots of it. We got space, dragon, adventure, even war games.
Yeah, dude, we even got rescue games, and man, they're smooth like ice.
Hey, what about you guys?
Oh yeah, we're in there too, the Cheetah Man.
Yes, but that's another story. If you want the ultimate game challenge, you have to get Action 52.
Yeah, it's so cool. 52 games in one, and you can even play it on Nintendo. Man, it's awesome. Get yours now.
Now playing at a store near you.
There is a legend that every retro gamer knows. A legend of an NES cartridge so awful it collected not just one, not just two, not even three, but 52 terrible games in one space. Sold for the same price as a games console. Today we uncover the bizarre legend of Action 52. Now it's likely you've heard of this atrocity. But for those of you who are just meeting the game for the first time, well, allow me to introduce you. Action 52 is an NES game with, well, 52 games on one cartridge. It had a big advertising push with adverts, TV commercials, and even a competition. But it quickly went down in history as one of the worst cartridges you could ever buy. All the games were a glitch-filled mess ranging from impossible to understand to completely impossible to play. It also features the infamous Cheetah Men, but more on that later. So, how did this abomination come into creation? Well, for that we need to travel back to the late 80s, the era when Nintendo owned the video game world. Anyone who was anyone was playing the NES. The Mario vs Sonic rivalry was yet to start, and for the time being, playing games meant playing Nintendo. They had managed to single-handedly pull the games industry out of its crash after shoddy products had flooded the market. And for now it seemed like you get some quality assurance by playing the NES. Well, for the most part. But deep in Taiwan, a seed was being sown, a seed that would grow into the idea in the mind of a man named Vince Perry, who just happened to be the head of Active Enterprises. Perry is shrouded in mystery. He's never been heard of since Action 52, and there's no pictures of him anywhere. Even more strange is people have tried to track him down, out of sheer curiosity, but not one person has achieved results. Vince Perry is an enigma. He seems to have existed solely to create Action 52 before disappearing into the shadows. And kinda scarily, when people do seem to be getting close to some answers, their contact will send them a single all-caps reply of,
"Why do you want to know this?"
even if their contacts are supposedly separate people. Despite the riddle of both Perry and his company, Active Enterprises, perhaps no others in the gaming industry have left quite the same legacy, or at least not quite as great a mystery. Fortunately, some of this tale can be uncovered. In fact, an old press package from the game tells us exactly how this all started, straight from the mouth of the mysterious Perry himself. Having a young kid, Perry was fed up having to pay around $60 for a new NES game, until one day he came across an illegal cartridge from Taiwan.
Wow.
A cartridge that just happened to have 40 games in one built into it. Buying it for his son, he was clearly impressed with the concept and began telling all his neighbours, who apparently went crazy for it. Seeing their reaction, he had the genius idea of doing the exact same thing, but legally, in the US. And thus, Action 52 started. And Perry's mind very quickly ran away with itself. While he went around collecting various shady investors from Europe and Saudi Arabia, his plans for the future got bigger and bigger. Why, this was going to be such a quick and easy way to make money. Why not make a franchise out of it? It couldn't be that hard, right? Well, there was no time to waste. One small problem though. Perry didn't know how to program, and it would take far too long to learn. Hell, why should he have to do it? He's the creative genius. Best find someone else to do it for him. But he couldn't just make the developers appear out of nowhere, and he didn't want to spend too much money on them. He needed someone desperate for a job that would do it cheaply. Turns out in the end, he didn't even need to look for them. Instead, a chance meeting set things into motion. Perry had an office space in a recording studio, where he would occasionally hold meetings about his new business ventures. It just so happens that a young man named Mario Gonzalez, yes, it really is a man named Mario who happens to also be named Gonzalez. It's a little bit strange, but he happened to be working at the same studio after recently finishing his degree in video and audio production. In early January 1991, Mario met with Vince Perry with a proposal. Perry's grand money-making scheme of Action 52 had been overheard by Mario, who took interest in the idea and decided he wanted in. Mario informed Perry that he had experience in games design and happened to know two college friends also with gaming experience. They would be happy to take the job. Perry was intrigued, but requested a demonstration of their skills. Agreeing to this request, Mario soon had assembled his team of Javier Perez for art and design, and Albert Hernandez for programming, both who were happy for the chance at a job. Mario himself would take on music and design. With all three taking up the challenge, they soon had a working Tetris clone called Megatris, programmed on an Amiga 500. When they got round to showing Perry, he was extremely impressed and quickly gave a demonstration to some of his investors who had similar responses. Truth is, this response was only because the Amiga was far more advanced in terms of graphics and sound than the NES they were comparing it to. But either way, the three landed the job, and were sent off to learn how to program using Nintendo equipment. But only for 2 weeks. After all, they had to get started. It's around this time that the fourth member of the team joined. Unfortunately, he's yet to share his name as of the making of this video, but he, alongside Mario, is responsible for most of the information we know about the game. I'll call him Developer 4, or Dev4 for short. Developer 4 and the others had met a few years prior at the very same recording studio. Having kept in touch, Dev4 was surprised to learn that they had all gone to Utah to learn how to make Nintendo games. Upon their return, he decided to visit them as they got to work making Action 52. While at first it was just to hang out, he would soon find himself taking on new responsibilities. The recording studio became their base of operations. The day started at 11 AM and ended at 11 PM earliest. Normally it would be around till 1 AM, but sometimes they'd be there till 6 in the morning. And because of the fact it was a recording studio, every single wall was soundproofed and essentially cut off from the outside world, with no natural light. It acquired the name The Cave, and was essentially their home for the next 3 months. Ah, yes, you see, for reasons quite unknown, Perry insisted that all 52 games needed to be completed in just 3 months. So in around 12 weeks they had to storyboard, design, develop the program, and test to make sure it was playable. Now bear in mind, 3 months was normally the minimal development time for a single NES game. They had 52 to make. It was evident that Vince Perry didn't really quite know how big a task this was, something that would become even more obvious as time went on. He was only in the studio very occasionally. He'd pop in, sometimes with some coffee, and then leave fairly quickly. As Mario himself puts it, this is where the adventure really began. And it started with title names. Ooze, Dead Ant, Rocket Jockey, those all made the final cut. Some games like Power Throne and Volatile didn't. Artie and the Ink Men was held back by Mario, as he felt it had potential to be a standalone title. But Mario Paint's release basically used the idea in the end. Although a game called Boss exists in the final product, it's not the one written here. Boss was originally the idea behind Game 52, which was at the time known as the Action Game Master. We'll come back to that later. The scope of the games had to be held back slightly, and they often changed drastically in concept to save time. Dead Ant, for example, became Dead Ant, a Space Invaders-esque shooter, rather than the initial idea of exploring a large ant colony to find food for the queen, while enemy insects hunted you down. Dev 4, meanwhile, had been spending a lot of time at the studio, watching the others work. Eventually, they trained him on how to design backgrounds and sprite animation on D-Paint, the PC software they used. He even fully designed around 5 to 10 of the games himself, and eventually he also came fully on board with the project, but never got round to signing any form of contract. In fact, at most, all he and the other developers ever got was an advance of $1,500 for all their hard work, and they even had to talk Perry into giving that to them. This advance was only probably given to them because of how overconfident Perry was becoming with the project. He was certain it was going to make him millions, and he was already planning ahead further. A Super Nintendo version, a Genesis version, they were already in his mind. But how could he make it even more popular? Well, at the time, the world was in its Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle boom. These characters were big business. If Perry could replicate that, he'd be set for life. So he got to work making his own superhero team. Remember how I said Game 52 was originally known as Action Game Master? Well, a game by that title no longer exists on the cartridge. The original plan was you'd have to defeat the bosses of the previous 51 games to win at Game 52. But this idea was thrown out when Perry announced he had a better plan. Enter the Cheetah Men. What was Vince Perry's answer to Ninja Turtles? Ninja Cheetahs. This was going to be the major game, with lore and an epic plot. He even got a comic book made to come free with every game. It advertised future issues, action figures, t-shirts, and even a planned TV cartoon with, quote, Disney quality animation. Once again, we can see how Perry didn't quite have a grasp at how game making works. By the time he announced these grand schemes, it was a little too late. The basic idea of the Game Master was already in place, and switching all their efforts to make one game would leave all the others unfinished. Thus, the characters of the Game Master still exist in the story of the Cheetah Men, as does the returning enemies and characters from the other games. Perry wasn't worried though. Any problems could be fixed in the sequel. Instead, what Perry was more worried about was that Mario wasn't spending enough time at the studio. While the other three were working hard, giving regular status updates via a hotline, and living off the 24-hour donut shop, Mario's time was being taken up with his own personal issues involving his girlfriend, who oddly enough was the inspiration behind the game Bubblegum Rosie on Action 52. Although Mario had created a graphics template to make sprite creation 10 times easier, and assured Perry they were fully on schedule, Perry didn't want to know, and thus Mario left the group. Problem was, Mario had made almost all the music. With him now out of the picture, there was only one thing to do. Steal music from elsewhere, of course! Alongside a Miami Dance CD, which had some voice samples they could use, songs stolen directly from other game developers were also plagiarized. Activision's The Music Studio for the Atari ST had its music put in several of the games, and another company, Sculptured Software, had its music engine directly copied into Action 52. And that wasn't all that was copied either. They still needed a menu system to select the games. The solution was simply buy more illegal multi-cart games and copy the menu from that. Eventually, after 3 months of living off donuts, working non-stop in a room with no sunlight, until they had the bright idea to remove the soundproof insulation, Action 52 was suddenly announced finished. It just suddenly ended. They hastily added a start menu, alongside some more stolen music, and the remaining 3 guys left. They didn't have a chance to playtest most of the games, leaving practically every single one of them unfinished. They didn't really care though. The developers went off and partied all weekend on the beach. Perry's job though was not yet done. Nintendo had rejected the game, so there went all hope of Perry ever creating a licensed NES title.
Mamma mia.
All the same, he still tried his best to get the game out there, sending flyers, pamphlets, and even commissioning a TV advert. His craziest scheme was a competition where if you managed to beat level 5 of the game Ooze and send in your unique code as proof, you would win $104,000, half of which was cash, half of which was a scholarship. The screen you'd have to send in as proof is indeed in the game, but the code is anything but unique, being the same on every cartridge. You couldn't even send the code in anyway. Ooze was impossible to beat as it crashed every time after level 2. Despite these dubious advertising tactics, at first it seemed to work. A fair few did sell, but unfortunately this all backfired pretty quickly. Word of mouth began to spread. The games were a mess, some of them didn't even work, and the price was insulting. Bear in mind, the Super Nintendo cost $200 on launch, and Action 52 was asking for the exact same price. Action 52 was now causing Active Enterprises to struggle more than ever. It was falling into tons of debt due to its failure. Perry was trying to come up with more and more crazy ideas of how he could turn this all around. His first tactic was to make another Action 52 game for the ever-popular growing Genesis. Hiring Albert and Javier once again to make this new version, this time they even had the help of an actual gaming studio, in the form of Farsight Technologies. They still even advertised the fact they made Action 52 on their website. Action 52 Genesis actually was far less buggy and had a lot more time put into it. Most of the games are, believe it or not, playable. I know. Despite this, the reputation of the NES Action 52 had crippled any chance of this version ever selling well. Its failure also meant Perry gave up entirely on making a Super Nintendo version. By 1993, Active Enterprises was at death's gates. In a last-ditch effort, Perry tried winning some people over in hopes they'd invest and save the company at the Consumer Electronics Show. Evidently, Perry was still overambitious about the company. He still claimed a TV show, action figures, and more were on the horizon for the Cheetah Men, despite nothing ever coming of it. He even had the guts to claim that they were making an animatronic Cheetah Man costume to go to events and promote the games. Yeah, I'm not joking. Action 52 was going to be advertised by a giant robot cheetah. That's not even the craziest claim though. Alongside a Cheetah Man sequel, Active's final foray into video games was none other than the proposed Action Game Master handheld. And oh boy, was this a fool's dream. Apparently, this supposed handheld console would be compatible with NES, SNES, and Genesis games. Now, ignoring the fact that it looks ridiculous, its screen is of bizarre proportions compared to the rest of it, and that there's no visible cartridge slots, the actual ability to stuff 3 consoles' hardware into one playable system was completely impossible in 1993. It doesn't even seem like it would be portable to begin with. If the screen was 3.2 inches big, overall it was 15 inches wide. It's not really surprising, is it, that no one tried to save Active Enterprises. Thus, the company came to an end. Riddled with debts and unfinished promises, Active Enterprises faded from existence. Warehouses were left full of their unsold games, and even contained the unreleased Cheetah Men 2 that wouldn't be found till years later. Turned out, it was basically the same as the first game. As for Perry, he disappeared and was never heard of again, until recently when it's believed that he passed away. The 4 developers never saw any return for their hard work and never had anything to do with the project again until recently, when 2 of them told their tale. While Action 52 isn't a good game, or really a good idea to begin with, it's most definitely one of gaming's best and most fascinating stories. It gives a peek into the world of video games in a time where it was believed they were get-rich-quick machines. An idea that hasn't completely faded, unfortunately. But hey, at least we're not getting completely unfinished games still, right? 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 Oh dear. Hey everyone, thanks for watching my new video on Action 52. This episode was part 1 of a multi-part set of episodes where we're going to look at some of the older and stranger myths of gaming. You know, that people have heard of, but never really known the full story about. But don't be surprised there are some standalone episodes to break it up between the parts. If you enjoyed this video, then why not check out the rest of the series? And if you want to stay up to date on when to expect a new episode, as admittedly they release a tad sporadically thanks to my university commitments, then make sure to follow me on Twitter. The link is in the description. As usual, please like, comment, subscribe and share this video, as every little helps. I'll see you guys next time.